What's up, YouTube? Capital G here, letting you guys know what the heck happened at YCS Prague. I spent a good portion of my weekend checking out the coverage so that you didn't have to. Now, I didn't get to watch as much coverage from Prague as I usually like to. Definitely not as much as YCS London or YCS San Diego last week, and that's simply just because of the time zone difference. I'm not sure what time zone they are in Prague, but I'm Eastern Standard Time in the United States, and I believe that day 2 started around 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I had just finished my live stream and I was like, man, I can watch maybe 1 or 2 feature matches, but I'm gonna pass out after that. I did kind of watch some more once I woke up and kind of read up on the coverage, and from what I could tell, YCS Prague is best described as, it was almost like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde event. It seemed like day 1 was as textbook as you could have possibly imagined, but then in day 2, holy moly, it was like a completely different event. Day 2 just had all of these crazy decks coming out the woodwork to try and, you know, take the crown away from Spiral unsuccessfully, as you guys could have imagined. It's pretty obvious at this point. Spiral went into this event as the favorites, and they ultimately took away the championship. This event was, it was a pretty good size, not quite as big as YCS London. The official registered attendance was 1,027, which I think is still very respectable. I think the attendance numbers are strong. Anytime a YCS is over 1,000 players, I think that that's fine. Even with YCS San Diego, which I believe was 957, I usually just round up. That's 1,000. We'll round this one down. Evens out. So it's 1,000 players. And day 2 was, when it comes to the top 32, I think it was what most people could have predicted. Spiral took exactly 50% of the top 32 with 16 players. That was followed by Trickstars with 7, which, if I'm not mistaken, that was the exact same number as YCS San Diego. So I think at this point you can look at Trickstars and say that it has cemented itself as the second best deck. Again, I'll stay true to what I said for the past few weeks. I don't believe that there are really any good side deck cards for Trickstars, although I did hear of some players with Spirals actually side decking the side frame. I forget which one it's called, but the side frame card that stops traps. I believe that people were playing that for reincarnation as, you know, something I guess that they could use from the hand to try and counter the card. Obviously Ash Blossom can stop it, but you know, I guess it does have a bit of a higher ceiling because you can get the driver out. Maybe driver can beat them down. Maybe you can go into a synchro play. So it does kind of make a little bit of sense. We then had Pendulum Magicians with 2. I feel like Pendulum Magicians are definitely falling short of expectations. Some people even had this deck as the best deck going into the format, and it just has not lived up for it. It just hasn't lived up to that title. It's not as good as Trickstars. A lot of it, in my opinion, is kind of obvious. It has to do with evenly matched. The deck just does not have a solid main deck answer to it. I know that a lot of people were main decking, or excuse me, they were experimenting with Solemn Scolding in the past couple of weeks. I think that a lot of people started playing Mind Crush in the sideboard in this event because I'm actually going to have a video on that. I think Mind Crush is extremely strong right now, but Pendulum Magicians just, they're not doing as well as Spiral. They're not doing as well as Trickstar. And I kind of feel like from event to event, you can look at other rogue decks and maybe they can be just as good as the, you know, the Pendulum deck is. So Pendulum are underperforming in my opinion. Now here's where the interesting stuff started to happen. We had 2 Lightsworn variants actually make it into the top 32, and this was so Europe in a nutshell. I don't know if you guys know this, but my god, there just seems to be some weird affinity that European players have with like Minerva Swarm builds and these weird kind of 60 card builds. You guys are looking at it right now. This guy has everything except the kitchen sink in this deck. You look at the monster lineup, he's got Giant Rex and Trick Clown, Thousand Blades, Goblinberg, only 2 copies of Wolf. I believe that he said he didn't want his deck to be so susceptible to bricking. He has the Brilliant Fusions in there, obviously a lot of hand traps, which I'll talk about in a second as well. So you saw a lot of kind of crazy Lightsworn variants popping up. But then you had something that I don't think anyone was ready for, and that was the Dino DNA. We had a Lost World version of dinosaurs making it to the top 32. I watched him in the feature match, and even though he kind of got, you know, he got 2-0 like railroaded by Spiral, I mean, it was still very entertaining to watch dinosaurs, especially a Lost World version. And this was the crazy thing. He ran 3 copies of Survival End in the freaking main deck. I saw that I was like, what? What's this guy doing? He said a lot of people had to read the card. Nobody even knew what it did. And I believe that he ran 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods as well, obviously to send survivals into the graveyard. It has that really nice effect where you can pop a dinosaur on your side of the field, and then you can obviously like pop any card your opponent wants to use, and you can kind of prop a problem card, or you can pop like a field spell or something like that. I would imagine that you'd probably want to pop like a baby Ceratosaurus, or maybe you could even pop Giant Rex and then banish him from the graveyard. Really interesting. He did not run the little pterodactyl card. I mean, usually I thought that that was like one of the cards that dinosaurs really leaned on, but I guess this is a different build because he's not running any True Kings in this build. So very interesting. Only 4 traps in his main deck, and he did run Imperial Order as that other trap card. So we saw a lot of kind of craziness. We also had ABC make it into the top cut. I think ABC is starting to get a foothold in the meta, and I believe that this was a little bit of a different variant as to what we saw, or excuse me, as opposed to what we saw at San Diego. I can't confirm this, but I believe that it was the variant there where the guy ran Brilliant Fusion and he ran Masterpiece in the main deck. Masterpiece obviously giving him a really big power card outside of just completely relying on ABC Buster Dragon, because there were a very high number of decks main decking Winter Cherries. Winter Cherries saw a ton of play, and a lot of people were not like, they were not going to be you know, completely just they weren't going to be caught with their pants down playing against ABC. There were a lot of people with ABC Buster Dragon either in their main deck or yeah, in their extra deck, you know, for the Cherries plays, or side decking it with the Cherry so that they could bring it in and so that they could hit Buster Dragon. So having a card like Masterpiece where you contribute your you could tribute potentially Brilliant Fusion. There were just obviously other cards. I believe he played True Draco Heritage as well. Just good continuous spells that you could use to get Masterpiece on the field and have more disruption, not just be completely reliant on a card like being completely reliant on a card like ABC Buster Dragon. I think that it did make a lot of sense. But we just saw a lot of crazy rogue when it came to the top 32 at YCS Prague, and there was something else that really piqued my interest, and I want to know if you guys think that maybe I'm reaching here, or am I kind of on to something, right? And by the way, shout outs to Lithium, because that guy was working like overtime for this event. I believe that he did over 15 deck profiles, which is actually crazy, guys. So definitely like check out Lithium. If you're not subscribed to him, please subscribe to Lithium. Out there working overtime to get us those deck profiles. But there were 2 players running World Chalice, and both of them went 8-2-1. That means that both players were on the bubble, and it was with different builds. Now, I'm not sure if they were on the same team or anything like that, but I'm starting to think that we should make something of this. Now, obviously, there was an event in the United States where I believe that World Chalice ended up taking 2nd place. If I can dig up that video, I'll have that linked in the description as well. And I'm just starting to think that World Chalice is a deck that maybe has been a little underappreciated, because I've been saying this for a while. World Chalice is every bit the hyperlink deck that Spiral is. It's not nearly as consistent, and obviously it doesn't get the protection of, you know, none of our cards can be like targeted, so it is susceptible to that. But when you look at like Brilliant Fusion, and then you look at the Venus plays, like there are a lot of ways for this deck to pop off, and if you don't have a hand trap, or if they can play through it because one builder's running like double summon, they can definitely cause you some nightmares. And one of the things that I think is profoundly scary about this deck is the fact that I see a lot of them main decking the Kaiju Waterfront, and usually they'll just play 1 copy of Gamma Seal. They'll search that Gamma Seal because clearly so many of their cards go to the graveyard. It's very easy for them to get counters on the card. They may summon Gamma Seal off like Firewall Dragon, and now they have a walking Solemn Judgment on the field to block out Evenly Matched. I also see a lot of versions run copies of like Solemn Scolding in the main deck, just another counter to things like Dark Hole and Evenly Matched. And dude, that can be incredibly scary because they put boards that are big enough to, you know, OTK their opponent, but they usually want to go first so that they can kind of lock you out and get big, you know, get a bunch of monsters on the field, bounce away your stuff with Firewall Dragon. Or I've seen even people play like ARCHLORD KRISTYA in the main deck, another card that they can easily summon, because with the Mystics, or with the Shine Balls and with the copies of Venus, obviously there's a lot of fairies in the deck. So it's very interesting because I feel like this event is one where we're starting to see these rogue decks kind of amass. And even though Spiral is clearly at the top of the mountain, we're starting to see some weakness from like the Pendulum Magician deck, a deck that a lot of people thought would take 6 or 7 spots. It's only taking 1 or 2 spots at the last couple of YCSs, and it's leaving room, it's leaving the door open for decks like Dinosaurs and World Chalice to start knocking on the door, and Mermeal, and all of these decks are like, wait a minute, maybe we can get into this top cut too. So I wonder if this is going to start being a thing, and it would not surprise me at all if we saw World Chalice and the next top cut of the next YCS. I think that'd be interesting. Now, when it comes to like the secondary market and cards that made like a really big impact in this event, I think I'd have to give it up to Cyframe Gamma. Cyframe Gamma, to my eye, has pretty much surpassed Droll and Lockbird in play. Not in Trickstars, because obviously they do have the potential combo with Reincarnation, solid card against Spirals. I think it is pretty good against Trickstar as well, but across the board, I would say that Gamma's probably the better card. Obviously better in something like Invoked, because even if you do get rid of your copy of Driver, I mean, obviously Cyframe Gamma is still a light card, so that you can use it with Merkaba, and it's definitely starting to show when it comes to the price. Cyframe Gamma is currently about $25 lowest on TCGplayer.com, and I believe that I checked eBay a little before making this video, and there was a copy for $23.95. So the card is going up, because I believe about a month ago it was only about $19. So it's not gone up that much, but it is surpassed Droll and Lockbird in price. And it's really interesting because, like, if you look at some of the matches, like the top 8 match where it was Lightsworn versus Trickstars, the Lightsworn player opened up with that Grass Looks Greener. He activated it. It predictably got hit with the Ash Blossom. He ends up coming over the top with the Cyframe Gamma. Duel's basically over. So I feel like if you ever resolve Gamma going first, you pretty much win, or if you resolve Gamma on your turn, unless it's like a player who already got their board completely set up. The Omega plus the card that you were trying to activate, whether it be a Desires, whether it be a Grass or a Brilliant Fusion, whatever ate up the Ash or whatever ate up the Maxi or something like that, you're almost certainly going to win the duel, because you just have you have board presence, plus you have the resolution of the power card that you were trying to get. And I think the last thing that I kind of want to talk about was the finals, because I know that people considered, or a lot of people are criticizing the Lightsworn guy, because Lightsworn did make it ultimately to the finals in this event. A lot of people were criticizing the Lightsworn guy for his play in game 3, and I think that it really wasn't justified. He went first, and he opened with Left Arm Offering, Trick Clown, Garnet, which is obviously a brick card. He opened with Gamma and then a copy of that Grass Looks Greener, and people were wondering why he didn't just immediately activate that Grass Looks Greener. The issue was, if his opponent had Ash Blossom, he would have obviously been fucked, and I don't know, man. I feel like he couldn't have risked that, and you can't say, well, couldn't he have just gammed the Ash Blossom? Because I believe that I believe that Left Arm Offering is a cost to banish, and it just would have been really bad. And you look at the picture that I'm showing you guys, and it shows Ash Blossom is actually in the guy's hand. So if that Grass Looks Greener gets Ash Blossom, he basically just loses the duel. So I don't really know if saying that what he did was the wrong play. I think what he did was the right play, where you set the Solemn Strike, you keep the Droll and Lock, or not the Droll. You keep the Gamma in your hand. Maybe your opponent summons Quick Fix. You Solemn Strike it. They bring it back with I don't know, Big Red or something like that, or with 1-for-1, or they do some other like play. They activate an effect, and then you Gamma that. And if they can still make Double Helix after that, then obviously, you know, they just had everything. And to be honest, the Spiral guy opened up with 3 copies of limited cards, guys. Well, 3 copies of limited cards. He opened up with 3 limited cards. He opened up with Rhoda, 1-for-1, and Quick Fix. If your opponent opens with 3 limited cards, like, that's clearly just the Yu-Gi-Oh God saying that it was not your day. So I don't know what he could have done differently. I felt like what he did was perfectly fine. I don't think it was any colossal misplay or whatever. But ultimately, what did you guys take away from YCS Prague? Whatever you did, leave it in the comment section below. If you think that I missed out on any other major talking points, leave that in the comment section below as well. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on those notifications for daily videos.